Welcome home. We are WNST. Tassel, Baltimore. Baltimore positive. We're positively in the epicenter, the heart of crab cake landia here in Baltimore. We're at Lexington Market, the new Lexington Market. We're at Fadley's. Luke, I should tell you, and I'll grab my lottery tickets here in a minute. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery, our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, making the water clean, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Big appreciation for all they do to keep us running here. But Nancy Devine, where we do the show, I'm looking across the street at Parks Fried Chicken, which has moved out of the market here at Packer Street. We're 20 feet away from playing in traffic, quite frankly, right at the front window. Beautiful new space here. Everything they brought, everything over to Fadley's. But on the wall, Nancy sort of stares at me. Now, Luke, have you ever met Nancy?
I don't think I have.
I don't think so. Yeah, I didn't think you had the privilege. And but she was here. I've seen her twice in the last month. She was here for
the big opening.
The crab races we did out here. She was here for the big opening. There's another big opening where the mayors come. The daytime ribbon cutting is next, like, Wednesday or Thursday. I'm sure she'll be here for that. Mr. Bill's had some health issues, but he was here as well. She's such sort of a light, but I brought her over here. I was eating a crab cake. The place was packed the night of the grand opening. And I brought her over here, and I said, look, this is where my set's going to be now because we want to get the original Fadley sign in, and the Fadley Seafood's a little high up, but we're trying to make it work. And I said, when I do my show now, every time I do my show, I'm looking right at you because she's on the wall here bigger than life from a big Baltimore magazine thing. And she said, we need to redo the picture, so I'm going like this at you.
I was just going to say she's smiling, so it's not as imposing, right?
You better talk about my crab cake. So Luke's halfway through a crab cake here. And you ate all the French. You didn't offer me a French fry, dude. God.
I can order you some.
No, I'll get some fries.
Okay.
Luke Jones is here. We're here doing sort of. I wanted these to be live in pregame and tonight's starters, and we have Suarez, and then we find out like they're going to do something with Means today. There's Prescott. So there's all this stuff. I want to use this as our nerd segment for you. You would admit you're a nerd.
Isn't every segment my nerd segment?
Correct. That's good. So the baseball nerd in you and the statistic analytical. I wouldn't say that's not my thing, right? You do know that in the 25th anniversary, brought to you by Curio Wellness, I did the scoreboard page for 8 years of my life every night, picking the loop leader. Does loop leaders mean anything to you? When I say loop leaders, that's what they were always called. See, you didn't even know that. Sporting News always called it the loop.
Okay.
The loop leaders. The batting leaders were the loop. It's called the loop.
Gotcha.
AL loop, NL loop.
I mean, I remember looking in the paper all the time and seeing the
Google
league leaders.
See, I'm teaching you baseball. You know what a can of corn is, right? You know what a Baltimore chop is, right?
Yeah.
Right,
of
course, right?
Of course.
You need to know what the loop leaders are. So I used to do the loop leaders in the – because if you don't know, nobody knows. I mean, that's weird. I thought you knew that. The scoreboard page, we'd say the loop leader. So I was an analytical nerd. Every Sunday paper, we had all the averages. Mm-hmm. My dad bought the Sporting News. My dad – loved nerdity and Ted Williams and batting 406 and 9 zones of the plate and the art of hitting. And my dad used to buy me these little Viewmasters with Rod Carew showing how he came through the zone, right? So I love all of this, but my press credential was taken 18 years ago, and I don't talk to batting cages and the coaches. I don't do any of that. I wish I did. You're that guy, but a stat hit me when I was away over the weekend. You know, I was a little asleep on the Orioles up in New York. I thought that the game was in Chicago, was in Baltimore, and I had a brain fart earlier in the week. And then I thought Sunday was Monday because everybody did because it was a holiday, and they played on Monday. They started a new series against the Red Sox in a game that felt like a Sunday. And I had to do radio with you. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get caught up. Get caught up on everything I missed over the weekend, just watching the games on my app. And I wound up, instead of on the individual stats, I went to Orioles.com. You're welcome. I went to Orioles.com, and team stats popped up first instead of individual, right? So I'm like, all right, team stats. They must be number one in a lot of things. They're number 2 in almost everything, and the Yankees are number 1. So I started nerding.
I'm proud of you.
Because I don't get the Sunday paper anymore, right? So like you have to seek this out, right? So I started nerding the team stats, and I'm like, how many home runs do we have? John Martin will be happy with me because of the Maryland Lottery. By the way, five large for Gunnar Henderson the other night with the Maryland Lottery. So I started nerding out, and the thing that struck me was that this team's not walking.
Yeah.
And that the Yankees are walking, and other teams walk, and they win so much, When's the last time we mentioned plate discipline or patience on this? I don't think you've said it 3 times this season. We're at the 3rd bowl.
I mean, I've mentioned it, but we haven't done a whole segment on it.
But it hasn't. Well, because they're winning every night.
Yeah. Well, and it's because they're leading. Well, okay, we could talk about their last in walks, and they are.
Let's go. I'm going to get my lottery ticket. And
They
let you
are.
nerd.
You know what they're first in, though,
crack.
is they are first in the American League in slugging percentage, which
does not shock me.
Is not only home runs, but that is also doubles. That is also triples, which the Orioles have a lot of team speed.
Now, moving the fence back would add. It would take and give in that
it's been some of that, and a lot of it's just that they have a really athletic lineup top to bottom. I mean, you have a 6'3" shortstop who hits for power, and unlike Cal Ripken, the comparison ends there. Gunnar Henderson can run. I mean, he can really run. So, I mean, you have that. So they hit for a lot of power. And first things first, before we get into walks, and look, I've broken it down. It's actually very simple why the Orioles are last in the American League in walks right now. It is so simple. But there's also a caveat to it. And I'm going to get to that. But I think we need to understand, because I
should have gotten a crap kick, because you're just going to talk and educate me today.
Well,
this is going to be great.
I mean, I hope I'm going to teach you a little bit here.
Okay, teach me.
First of all, we need to understand it, and I have mentioned this in passing a number of times, but Joe Sheehan, longtime friend of WNST, used to talk to him all the time. He has a baseball newsletter that he writes, and I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday of this week, as we're entering this Tampa Bay series in real time. He talked about it. Offense is really down around baseball, and we've talked about that off and on over the last 10
Everybody
years.
throws 100 miles an hour. Everybody's a specialist.
So
there are very few pinch hitters, right? Or specialists like that.
Sure,
right?
We've talked about 3 true outcomes: walk, hit, or walk, strikeout, home run. Right? We've talked about that a lot.
Pitcher's not batting's a little weird. That offense would be, at least through half the league. That's kind of weird, right?
But what we're finding this year, and this is where it's relevant that the Orioles are first in slugging, home runs and power is way down. I mean, it really is. You look at the run-scoring environment, and it's always important to recognize that. Baseball loves its numbers, right? And we try to compare across eras. But you know very well, 1967 was a very depressed run-scoring environment. They made changes, right? We think of
Louis Tion had a 112 ERA, dude.
Right.
Son Sam McDowell.
Think about what Yaz won a Triple Crown hitting what?
Bob Gibson.
Frank Robinson the year before.
Right.
Triple Crown hitting what? So they made changes. Different run-scoring environment than, say, 1998 in the midst of the steroid era and home runs being what they were at that point.
And bandbox ballparks.
Absolutely. And expansion is always a big one.
364
1961
into the power alley.
Yeah,
right.
1961 was expansion. You had Maris Mantle and Jim Gentile, by the way. So you always have these eras of baseball where you have to be cognizant of run-scoring environment. So a big thing that people are talking about but maybe don't realize on a night-by-night basis because you just look at counting stats or you just look at average and you say, oh, well, he's hitting lower than he did last year, or, oh, he's walking less than he did last year, or his power numbers aren't as good. The Orioles' power numbers are really good. And relative to what you're seeing in baseball where it is depressed and there's been talk about the baseball not being as lively, Palmer talks about the baseball every year. Sometimes is there some hyperbole at work on a year-to-year basis? Sure. But there's data that, they talk about drag of the ball and all kinds of different things that they try to theorize about. A few years back when in the midst of the Orioles being really terrible, home runs were way up and the ball was really lively.
Well, there's also 92 degrees in humidity, too, that factors into July and August.
And
right?
there's that. However, remember a few years back, the humidor treatment of baseballs, remember that was a Colorado thing. That's been standardized. So, they're trying to make things on a level playing field as much as you can.
Teach people about that, because that's not a real familiar topic.
Well, that has to...
Palmer talks about
Colorado, I don't know all, it has to do with humidity and trying to have the ball basically act the same way in every environment. Understanding that, yes, different ballparks, different dimensions, hitting a home run.
I can tell you the humidity in my basement's different than the humidity upstairs, and it changes everything.
And that was something that, in Colorado, with the air being so thin, the ball has been crazy for years, with home run numbers. Why no one wants to pitch for the Rockies unless you pay them a ton of money. So look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I have all the answers in terms of why offense is down as much as it is, but it's down. So when you're understanding that it's down and you're understanding that the idea of playing small ball, where
getting multiple hits to score runs.
Needing multiple hits to score runs is going to be more problematic then. So the idea is almost like thinking about it from a lottery standpoint, from a gambling standpoint, looking at odds. The Orioles had these guys who hit for power, and I think they're trying to take advantage of that now.
And they also run, which brings that risk-reward to.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a different era where you get 2 pickoff throws.
Right.
2 pickoff throws. If you're Mateo, you're on third base after a walk.
Right. I mean, stolen bases are up around baseball, so there's a factor there. But I think it's been interesting because you see the Orioles' numbers being what they are, and people are saying, well, they're not drawing walks anymore. But first of all, we need to clarify something. This was not a team that led the league in walks last year or anything like that. They were pretty average overall when you look at the collective, you look at the aggregate. In the same way I've talked about the Ravens' running game in the aggregate. And now
10 years ago, they took more walks, right? The Chris Davis factor. Adam Jones didn't walk.
They didn't have many guys who took walks.
Hardy,
then. It was Markakis, Chris Davis, and after
they've never
that,
had a team full of guys that did that.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in the Euclid era after Moneyball, where that became one of the great level playing, OBP became something we talk about.
Sure,
right?
sure. So what you have, like I said, offense is down. It hasn't necessarily been because of strikeouts and walks. It's been more so the ball doesn't seem as lively as it was a year ago. That doesn't mean that baseball fundamentally did anything deceitful, although we've certainly talked about years where the baseball, you kind of wonder. But so you're kind of looking at it from a standpoint of trying to score runs, a standpoint of trying to maximize your offense. I think I've said this to you. It's been talked about. I don't know if it's common knowledge, but the Orioles, they're analytically minded, right?
Sure.
I think people have heard that. They use technology. Players have
Would that allow you to think that they're more aggressive as a franchise in whatever way that would be? They're analytic because they treat all of this like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, right? Like they're never going to come clean with any of this.
Right. It's all proprietary.
Maybe they've come to the point of thinking like we have hitters that we don't really want Adley Rutschman to walk. That's an opportunity lost to some degree. We want him to swing the bat.
Well, and since you just kind of spoiled it for me, I'm going to break this down very simply. When you look at where they are from a walk standpoint, I can go through, and you can see right here. I have it right here. I listed out.
He was a school teacher, man. He has penmanship.
I have the walk rates
Yes.
because the counting numbers are a little bit tougher to deal with when you're talking about one season that's a third of the way through compared to last year. But you go through, and I'll give you the numbers in a moment, but let's go through the Orioles regulars. I'll save Adley Rutschman for last. Gunnar Henderson, walk rate last year, 9% of his plate appearances. His walk rate's up. And we talked about this a little bit. Gunnar got off to such an amazing start. I think pitchers are pitching him a little more carefully now. His walks have gone back up. So
there's also guys behind him in the lineup protecting him too, to some degree.
You
don't want to walk him.
Yeah, to some degree.
Walking him, he's as good as a double.
Although he's had Adley Rutschman behind him all year, and Adley Rutschman is having a great year. So you always have those factors, but his walk rate is up. Ryan O'Hearn has more than doubled his walk rate. He's striking out as much as he walked. Last year, that was not the case. He was much more swing and miss, and
he's still an ascending player.
At age 30, I think he's 30 now.
So you guys get it late.
Well, it's that.
I'm 55. I'm still trying to get
getting with the right organization, quite frankly, and
right.
Nothing against Kansas City.
Being used in the right
different voice, different technology. Absolutely, they very much protect him against left-handed pitching. He barely ever sees lefties, but his walk rate way up. Mountcastle walk rate is down. Mountcastle's never walked. Yeah, we've seen periods for a month or two. Second half of last season, for example.
He's the greatest example. They want him swinging the bat.
Yeah, I think. Here's the difference. You don't just want guys swinging the bat. You want guys to make good swing decisions, right? And that's not just, it's a strike, I swing. It's a ball,
That's my pitch.
You want to look for, and these guys know, they have heat maps, it breaks down where they're really best hitting the ball. And you
don't swing at that pitch. You can't handle it. Well, come on, coach. No, identify that pitch and don't swing
exactly.
It. Yes.
And now, if it's two strikes, that's a different. The equation changes.
Right.
But yeah, so there's all of that. And look, we could really get deep into the weeds there to the point.
I already statused this week that it's so nice to talk about baseball with my buddies.
But anyway, continuing.
I even had Alan on the show this week.
So Mountcastle walk rate down. Westberg's walk rate almost identical to what it was last year. Kauser barely played last year. His walk rate is higher than Austin Hayes' walk rate was last year as the primary left fielder. Cedric Mullins, there's a problem in terms of his
swinging
walk
to
rate.
bad pitches, yeah.
And I don't know how much of it's that. Yes, that's part of it.
Not even getting good cuts.
I also think pitchers are challenging him because he's not swinging the bat. I mean, you could go up there and, like, I could go up there and say, you know what, I want to draw walks. They're going to throw it right down the middle to me because they know I'm not going to handle it.
He could crush it, though. He's a guy who can hit a home run at every at bat, right?
He has that ability. We're not seeing him do it with
Correct.
the same frequency, and of course, he's not walking anymore, striking out, pops out too much. I mean, we've talked about Cedric a lot. I don't want to belabor the point, but walk rate definitely down. Part of it is probably bad swing decisions, and part of it is, after a while, pitchers see you're hitting under 200. They're gonna challenge you. They're gonna go after you to the point the opposite of what Gunnar Henderson has been, right? You have a guy that
you're gonna swing at your pitch and still not be able to hit it.
Yeah. So there's some of that. Santander's walk rate is down a smidge. I mean, when you're looking at these numbers, last year it was 8.4%, 7.7%. That's statistical noise at this point. That difference is not meanrimeaningful. And
not to his overall lack of productivity.
Exactly.
This year.
So really, it comes back to two guys. I already mentioned Cedric Mullins. So Adley Rutschman last year had, I want to say, finished with 92 walks. I think that was the raw total. He walked in 13.4% of his plate appearances. Now, that's well above average. The league average last year was, I think, right around 8.5%.
I was going to say 8. Okay.
So, and obviously it varies from year to year, but 13.4% last year. This year, his walk rate is 5.3%. I mean, that right there alone is about, for a third of a season, you're talking roughly 20 walks.
Where's his OBP versus last year?
On base percentage, I don't have his numbers in front of me.
He's hitting better than last year, right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
His batting average is up.
Yeah.
His slugging percentage is up.
Your slugging percentage doesn't go up when you walk.
Yeah, exactly. So now here's where we look at this.
My dad would be so proud of me.
Rutschman alone, that's about 20 walks there. For a third of a season, that's roughly 20 walks. If you added 20 walks to the Orioles total right now they still wouldn't be leading the league, but it would be much more in line with where it was last year, which was roughly middle of the pack. So that's where we look at this and say, okay, in the aggregate, they're not walking as much. I think you'd like to see some course correction there. I think privately they would say that. At the same time, you look at Adley Rutschman's statistics, his average and slugging are way up. He's on pace to hit more home runs. Is it bad that he's walking that much less than he did last year? Probably to some degree, but not nearly as much as...
We haven't talked about it at all because they're winning.
Well,
and they're winning because he's hitting the ball, not because he's walking,
And that's the thing. And this is where we need to remember. And look, you're talking to a self-professed nerd. You called me a nerd at the beginning of our segment here. Walks are good. At the same time, walks are one base.
Right.
If you are slugging, that's... Yes, it can be one base, but 2 bases, 3 bases, 4 bases. So
that's where the real value comes.
If you're really asking me what would I rather, if I could only have one or the other, what would I rather do, get on base at a high rate or slug at the highest rate? I'm probably taking slugging because you can be a 400 on base percentage guy, but if you're only a singles hitter, that's still valuable, don't get me wrong, but you might have a guy that profiles as, he walks but not at that same clip, but hits for a lot more power. That's a much more valuable player. So there's nuance to this. I mean, as is the case with anything, we look at numbers and we make these quick conclusions a lot of times. And, I saw this just like anyone else. And really, it comes down to 2 guys. It's really Adley Rutschman, who is hitting for more power and very productive, and his overall, his OPS and all that is up from where it was a year ago. Keeping in mind, the run-scoring environment across baseball is down. So, again, that's what makes what Gunnar Henderson is doing this year that much more impressive. Makes what Adley's doing that much more impressive because across baseball, power is down. So, I think there's a middle ground here. I think if Adley Rutschman, for the rest of the year, I don't think necessarily the best approach for him is his walk rate to go back up to 13% because John Smoltz, I think it was Smoltz who called the games in the postseason. I was at the ballpark, so but I think part of the commentary team, whether it was Smoltz or whoever it was, talked about the fact that Adley needed to be a little more aggressive and at times was taking too many pitches. And I think there was a little bit of that. And I think for someone with the knowledge of the strike zone that he has as a hitter and as a catcher, right?
He's aware of this.
You're not going to suddenly go from a 13.4% walk rate, a guy who walks 92 times a year, to suddenly a guy who's on pace to walk 35 times, right? I mean, you're not going to have that much of a shift. Yeah, as you get older, some of your skills might decline, but, it's not as though he suddenly lost the ability to draw a walk. He's clearly being more aggressive. And the numbers bear out that it's worked out. I think for him, as the season goes on, probably finding a middle ground there, finding a sweet spot. I don't know, maybe a walk rate that's more in line with where Gunnar Henderson is right now, which is right around 11%. If he does that and continues to remain aggressive on hitters' pitches that he can drive, then you're talking about a guy who's really
part
good.
of him walking is getting on base and who's batting behind him, right? Like him being on base is fundamentally a good thing.
Yeah, and keep in mind, when his batting average is up and he's hitting for more power, he's getting on base that way. It's just it's not drawing walks in the same way. So, look, could they stand to walk a little bit more? No question about it. I don't think there's any debate about that. But, again, when you look at the numbers, it's really two guys. Like I said, Gunnar Henderson's walking at a higher rate than he did last year. O'Hearn is way up. It's really Rutschman, who I think is more of a deliberate approach at the plate to be more aggressive, and Cedric Mullins, who we're talking about it right now. Is he going to be an everyday player? Is he going to be still on the Major League roster by the end of the year, or is he going to be sent to Norfolk at some point?
The last thing I've seen this was like a Jonathan Scope sort of looking like going from an all-star to being a troubled Major League player at 30, and a guy that's got great tools, and a guy that had great baseball sensibilities about him. He didn't get by on being sloppy and just raw ability to some degree,
And a lot of it does speak to it's a difficult game. And like I said, offense is really down. So you have other teams around baseball. Now, they might not be as famously known players as Cedric Mullins, which, not famous around the league, but he's been an all-star. He's been a 30-30 player. But go look at this. We talked about this a few weeks ago when Arizona came into town. Corbin Carroll was the toast of the National League last year. Go look at his numbers. He's been horrible this year.
He was the most exciting player in the postseason last year.
He's been awful this year. So, one, it's a testament to Gunnar Henderson. No sophomore slump for Gunnar. He's graduated from Rookie of the Year to MVP status. But it's difficult. And, again, we're seeing it across baseball. And it's not to make an excuse for any individual. These guys know. Cedric Mullins be the first to tell you he's not performing this year. But it's tough. Those guys out there are throwing with crazy velocity and crazy spin, crazy break on the ball. All of that. And now when you look at the approach, and this has been something we've talked about fundamentally for 10-plus years now, with pitchers throwing as hard as they can, with as much spin, with as much vertical and horizontal break on the ball. Shifting was a big part of this, too. Now we've eliminated that to some degree, although you can still shift a little bit, right? You just can't go across the line extending out from second base. But, you kind of look, what's your best approach? And you hit the nail on the head right away when I said how, the idea of playing small ball and having to string together multiple hits to score runs, that's probably not the most optimal approach with what baseball is today. I'm not saying there's not a place for that at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But in a big picture capacity, if you have guys who can slug and you guys have guys who can drive the ball and
but this is also a team. If you get guys on the base pass, these guys can run the bases.
Absolutely.
This team runs the base as well. That if they get guys on base, it creates havoc. Pitchers work out of the stretch. And the two pickoff thing, I don't know who. To me, that's almost dumber than the guy on second base, than the Manfred man.
Right. It's tough. Look at Corbin Burns. The one thing you can say about Corbin Burns, he's pretty awful at holding runners. Right. That's changed, but. He's talked about this going back to last year, even in Milwaukee. He was always a guy who worked very slowly. The pitch counter has obviously changed that. For him, he viewed it through the lens of, am I going to be so concerned with runners and try to slide step, which, you don't see many guys do that anymore. And that's really going to impact my ability to face the hitter and get the hitter out. He views it through the lens of, okay, if someone does get on, I don't want to just automatically give them second base, but if it happens, I want to make sure I'm still focused enough on the hitter that
I'm not giving up the single that scores.
I'm giving up another hit or another home run in the process.
Right.
So there's hidden costs to all this. You just said it. The two disengagements, we can all remember 3 years ago, numbers of times, 20 years ago, guys thrown over to first base 7 times. You talk about the time between each pitch. Talk about something that's slowing the game down. That absolutely did. So, we want to speed up the game, and we've done that. And I think the overall outcome for that has been very positive for baseball. But you do have hidden hidden costs with that. You've talked about it a
Dude,
lot.
if you can't pick the guy off on the third time, you might as well hand him second base.
And that's kind of the thought. And we've even seen, Corbin Burns at one point just dropped the ball. Yeah, at one point in a start earlier this year. It was going to be his third disengagement, which guy's going to get second base anyway if you don't pick him off. So you see different things like that. But you made the point about base running. I think the biggest key for the Orioles is not stolen bases. I think they are so good at just taking the extra base. I think you look at the reads they get, and this is something they focus on in spring training. You could see it hours before the game. Not that they're all out there at the same time running bases, but they run bases during batting practice. You get reads. You understand angles. You understand how the outfielder's
that
position.
Ball was hit hard. That ball wasn't.
Did the outfielder get behind the fly ball that he can catch it on the run?
But also picking up the third base coach, too.
Exactly. Oh, that's part of it, too. So,
yeah.
So for me, the stolen bases are naturally part of that. But I think they are just so good at taking the extra base. Brandon Hyde was asked about it earlier this week, and he said other teams know that you better be on your P's and Q's with how you field, how you're hitting the cutoff man, all those different things, because they know that we will eagerly take an extra base if you give us an opportunity to do it. Not to mention guys are just fast and they're able to do it. So, this is all of this is said not with the idea that the Orioles offense is perfect or beyond reproach or there aren't improvements that need to be made. We've all seen the offense fall off some in May from the month of April, but I'll remind everyone, going into this weekend's play, they're second in the American League in runs scored per game behind Cleveland, and the Yankees are kind of right there as well. So even with this approach where, probably be nice to have Adley Rutschman bump up the walk rate, it doesn't have to be where it was last year.
But then expect the slugging to go down too.
Well, but that's the sweet spot. If he can find a middle ground to, from 13% to 5%, can he get to 10% and still maintain?
But are those eventual hits or those eventual outs?
Oh, right, sure. And that's part of it. Look, this is really hard what they do. And you can appreciate this. I know, it was years ago, but my biggest thing, and look, I've been in sports media now with you for a long time now, and I don't say this with any level of disdain or disrespect for fans, but when you are around these guys on a daily basis, whether we're talking the NFL or Major League Baseball, which are the two sports, obviously, that I've covered most extensively, you really do come to a new appreciation for just how challenging it is. And I don't say that in a way for anyone to feel sorry for them. They're making millions of dollars, right? Even the league minimum's making way more than I'll ever make. But it is truly challenging, and I think if there's something that I hope I've gained in the media, it's a humility to recognize how challenging that is. Not that I won't criticize a player.
Oh, and also the humility to realize how much smarter they are than we are.
But no question.
There's no doubt about that.
So that doesn't mean criticism isn't warranted. That doesn't mean that questions aren't warranted. That doesn't mean
questions are what we do.
But at the same time, be done with a way of recognizing that it is really challenging what they're trying to do, and
respect the effort.
And that's why I said you look at anyone could look at Baseball Reference and see that the Orioles are last in walks and say, "Oh man, these guys are free swinging from their what."
Well, it jumped out at me, and it wasn't something that. By the way, I don't get the game notes. Yeah, I don't even get the media
notes. Really,
so
but like I said, it's really. For anyone with meaningful differences, it's really two guys. Adley Rutschman way down, but we've talked about that. His power's gone way up.
And Mullins is getting less at bats.
And Mullins is just struggling in general.
Yeah.
And I'll throw one other
guy.
This
Mullins thing doesn't project because he won't get the next 150 at bats if the next 150 at bats go this way. He just won't.
Yeah.
And with options. And I don't mean options for him to go to the minors. I mean options for the organization.
Well, and it just
to have other players that are waiting in line.
Well, that's where I said
this is crowded.
But this is where I said, and now Cowser could end up replacing him essentially. But for now, Cowser has replaced Austin Hayes. Colton Cowser walks at a higher rate than Austin Hayes.
Yeah, when outfielders compete, you win.
So that's where I said, again, you look at their on base percentage, you look at their walks. Yeah, it's down from last year. No, the numbers are there. Anyone can see that.
Dude, that guy's eating oysters, man.
But when you break it down, it's really just been a couple players, and one of those players is having a great season. He's on pace to have a season would rival Gus Triandis at his best, or Chris Hoyles back in 1992-93.
Gus Triandis, my father just rolled over over Gardens of Faith. You said Gus Triandis.
It's funny. So the press box attendants at the ballpark, they have a daily trivia question, just that they do amongst themselves, and fun Orioles thing. So every once in a while, when they're stumped, they'll ask some of us reporters. And I was asked the other day, it's like they said, okay, our question was, who is the Orioles' all-time leader in home runs by a catcher?
All-time leader.
for home runs by a catcher.
That's Triandos. Like, I mean, Hoyle's somewhere in there. Hold on a second. How many? Earl Williams was not the catcher long enough.
No.
Wieters hit some home runs. I mean, he was here a little while.
He's up there.
Yeah, Wieters would be here a little while. I mean, come on. What am I missing? It's not Rick Dempsey. I mean, I'm trying to think of who am I missing here. It's not Terry Kennedy. It's not Bob Melvin. Chris Hoyles. It wasn't Charles Johnson. I'm going through every catcher in the history of the team here. Chris Hoyles?
Chris Hoyles.
All right. Well, I got that. I gave him second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That wasn't bad.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, all
no,
right.
and I didn't know off the top of my head.
How did I do? You got the whole list here. Hold
Hoyles,
on. Hoyles, Triandos, Wieters, Dempsey. Elrod. Oh, Mickey Tettleton. I should have gotten it.
Well, Mickey Tettleton.
He was a lot, yeah.
And he was only in Baltimore for a few years.
Andy Etchebarren.
Yeah.
Lopez, there's Charles John, Williams. Hold
Adley
on.
Rutschman's already in
Big
the top 10.
Cat Williams there. Caleb Joseph at 31 home runs. That's
not many, though.
Severino, Lawler, Fordyce, Kennedy. Where's Jeff Tackett? Damn. All right. Jeez, I'm sorry. I'm reading
Anyway,
from the screen.
you brought up Gus Triandos, so I thought, oh, man, I was just talking about him the
Dave
other
Duncan
day.
had 16 home runs. Look at that, man.
But yeah, I've said this to you before, though. Another example, Chris Hoyles, one of the most underrated players in Orioles history. We don't appreciate how good he really was for a 5 or 6
Have I told you why I appreciate Chris Hoyles?
I think you have, but humor me.
Chris Hoyles, so summer 1993, as you can well imagine, it was a little different. And this is what I would say to Mr. Rubenstein.
31 years ago.
Yeah, there was a palpable energy around downtown on a daily basis. I was broadcasting from 5 Light Street above the McDonald's. Building's gone now, right at the corner of Light. I mean, the literal center of the city. Light in Baltimore, boom, up in the sky, 5th floor. So 93, we had moved over to the Radisson Lord Baltimore, and everybody in the city's trying to get All-Star Game tickets, right? And I guess I had some people in the front office I knew, but nobody really had tickets. I mean, like, it was really, really hard ticket to get.
Sure.
But I knew players. And at one point, David Segui was going to, like, hook me up and this and that. Things happened, whatever. And Chris Hoyles was in the locker room early, 2:30 in the afternoon. Dick Bosman was in there. Elrod, probably Cal Sr., who I still never spoke to because I was always intimidated by Cal Sr. And Chris was in there, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm looking for All-Star Game tickets for my buddies. I'm not scalping them. I just want to, like, get my buddies in. It's my second year in radio. Third year radio, but second season radio. And Chris says, hey, man, that's pretty good Chris, by the way. Pretty good. That's a good.
I've only met him a couple times, but, yeah, I remember what his voice sounds like.
You need tickets for your buddies? Look, man, I got a couple of seats. They're not really good seats, but you can have them. And I'm like, what do you mean I can have them? They're $50 or whatever, but, I'll have them for you. Will you want them tomorrow? I'll give them. And how many you need? I said, well, I mean, I got 4. You want them? Yeah. So
That's pretty cool.
Chris Hoyles, and I didn't even sit in the seats, right? I had the press
Chris
pass.
Hoyles, who should have been an All-Star that year.
Oh, dude, he got screwed.
He was phenomenal that year.
Screwed. Well, it was the whole Cito Gaston thing.
Go look at the
Cito Gaston.
Go look at the I have it in front of me right now.
So
310, 416, 585 was his slash line. That's crazy.
He had grand slam bombs to win games. Yeah. He was the best. So I love Chris. So John Raffalidis, Kevin Eck, Swish Morrison, and Mike Fountain sat in those seats, and they were literally Section 388. Row 21. They were 5 seats from the top. They were all the way at the end.
I've sat up there
But
before.
the interesting part of that seat, where the fencing's beside you all the way at the top, is they had the front row seat for Free Willy. When the Free Willy sign guy was climbing the scoreboard, they watched him climb the scoreboard because they were the ones watching him.
That's really
they were a little concerned, like terrorism, crazy.
Sure.
Guy was climbing a stanchion, They made movies about that in the 70s, like Black Friday and stuff. So Chris Hoyles will always be a man of my heart 31 years later. And he didn't even hook me up. It wasn't even about it like a girl. Yeah. It was about my buddies getting into the ballpark because that's what you do, blood on blood. It's like a Bon Jovi song. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if they had a good time that night, and Randy Johnson and John Kruk and Kirby Puckett, and what else happened that night? Anything else happen?
What was it, Pudge who hit the ball that got stuck in the wall?
Correct. The ball got stuck in the wall.
Barry Bonds was ready to play the carom. And
how old were you?
9. I was not quite 10.
He's 9 years old.
Yep. I turned 10 that October.
Somewhere
Watched
there's
it at home.
footage.
I did not go to the All-Star game, though. I just watched it at home.
Somewhere there's footage of the home run derby, which was tape delayed, and I literally watched the entire home run derby sitting next to Mark McGwire.
That's fun.
In the American League dugout. And they all knew me there, the ushers, the cops, they all knew me. And when everybody else was getting thrown out of the dugout to leave, I just sort of stayed. And I literally watched most of that home run derby from the dugout or from the cork right in front of the dugout area.
Was McGwire in the derby that year?
McGwire was Oakland A's jersey, right? So I think he was in it.
Okay.
Juan Gonzalez, Griffey, right?
Gonzalez and Griffey were,
Did
Gonzalez
Palmeiro participate, or did he wuss out? Well, he wasn't with us then.
He wasn't with the
He
Orioles
wasn't with
yet.
us then. Yeah, okay.
Piazza was in it and got shut
all right,
out. I
there
remember
you go.
that.
All right.
Oh.
McGriff, National League, maybe?
McGriff might have been in
There
it.
you go. I'm thinking of the Bonds. The Bonds probably didn't
I
participate.
think Bonds was in it. I think he was. I don't know.
Was there some social that you had to participate
But there might have been. Juan Gonzalez and Griffey obviously put on the show. Griffey hits the warehouse. Gonzalez hit the facing of the upper
Balls
deck.
were juiced. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
The balls were You know that, right?
I'm okay with them juicing the balls for the home run derby.
I know this for a fact because Greg Biagini, the late, great Greg Biagini, was the batting coach.
Yeah.
Greg was great, man. Greg would teach me stuff. Like, he would be at the cage. He said, what do you want to know today? What do you want to learn today? You see him, he's dropping his hip. He's dropping his hip. It was an education. But he pitched. He said, I throw to Chris Hoyle, Sam Horn every day. They all try to hit the second deck. Every left-handed hitter tries to hit the warehouse. Every right-handed hitter's trying to get up on the second deck. Yeah. Nobody's come close. So Chris Hoyle's the strongest guy I've ever seen. He can't. Sam Horn can't do it.
So maybe hit it on a hop at best.
Cal Ripken's a big man. He can't do it, And he said to see 14 of them get hit up there on the same day, he said the balls came out of the oven. He said the balls literally, warm the balls up.
It's a derby. Did. I'm okay with that for the derby. Just can't do that during a game.
Luke Jones is here. We're Fadley's, and we're giving away Pac-Man scratch-offs. I'm going to have the Lucky 7 soon. We're doing this crab cake tour a lot of places. We're going to be at State Fair next Thursday. We're going to be at Cooper's in North in Timonium Mays Chapel. I will be eating the gumbo there. I promise you that. That's on Tuesday. We'll be back down at Cooper's on Fleet Week on the 14th. So Luke and I are going to have a little respite this month from Fadley's on the 14th and the 28th. We'll be back at it here together in July. But, of course, he and I do it almost every single morning, talking about the Orioles, talking about the Ravens, OTAs. We got all – everybody's – Lamar's not around. John's pissed.
Yeah.
John's not sending me texts this year about how pissed he is that Lamar's not coming.
I mean,
that was so 3 years ago.
He didn't say very much the other day, but the fact that he didn't say very much the other day kind of said what he wanted to say.
And now they're trying to screw with the whole training camp to mess with the coaches' summer.
I don't want. I know we got to wrap here.
No, we don't. We're all right. I don't. So Bill's over here. We got to wrap. Yeah.
I will say this, and I'm not the only one who said this. If the NFLPA's idea of this is what they want to go to an 18-game schedule, then they're more lost than I thought. I mean, really? And believe I've already seen
DeMar Smith made $8.7 million this year.
I've already seen a number of players say they don't like this concept whatsoever. But even if they do, that's going to be what you want the owner's concession to be, to take 18 games. There's no hope for him if that's what it is.
There it is. He is Luke Jones. He's Baltimore Luke. You can find him out on the interweb. You can find me out on the interweb. We're together at BaltimorePositive.com. We appreciate everybody's support. As we go into summertime, talking baseball around here, Bill Henry, controller of the city of Baltimore, is going to be here talking about where all the money goes as I sit in the beautiful Lexington Market. We really do love coming down here. So I'm not going to be here for a couple weeks. I'll be looking forward to getting back here in early July. I am Nestor. He's Luke. We're WNST. AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore. Positive.